Welcome along to episode 4 of the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail. It's flying along here next week, or this weekend rather. We have the Dublin Racing Festival, and before you know it, we will all be at the Cheltenham Festival. So this is the show if you want the countdown to Cheltenham. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined this week and every week by Matt Tombs and Donn McClean, where we try and use some of those trends of what the best races are leading up to the Cheltenham Festival and get the guys' assessment on weekend review, eye catchers as well. And this week, at the end of the show, we'll have a brief look at the Dublin Racing Festival, see if there's any horses the guys are keeping an eye on. So yes, stay with us. Insights.matchbook.com. Lots of betting content up there. And do check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange. We invariably will be best price on the odds checker grid for all horse racing. And the best time to bet with us on the racing is those 5 or 10 minutes beforehand. But yeah, other than that, lads, let's get started. We've a lot to get through. Matt, we'll start with the Beulah, where Constitution Hill was impressive. Obviously, we all saw that final hurdle, so you can give us that assessment on that little bit of a scare that Nico had. But by and large, it's great to see him back. It was just a pity, obviously, given the storm and maybe 1 or 2 other excuses that Lassie Mount didn't travel.
Yeah, it was. And as you say, the mistake at the last, it got to the stage with Isterbrack where I was nervous watching him, even when he had a simple task and I hadn't backed him. And that was the case with Constitution Hill here. I was one of many who gave an audible gasp at the last. Nico put his hands up afterwards. He was hesitant. He didn't ask him up and then tried at the last minute, and Constitution Hill made a mess of it. The good news for Constitution Hill was that despite that mistake at the time, when he was going about 34 miles an hour, it never looked like falling. Not just that, he kept a lot of his momentum going. If he lines up in good health, I'd say his aggressive jumping may be his biggest danger. Those fast, slick 2-mile hurdles are always only a small margin away from a race-ending error. Bouvardaire showed that when coming down and going for a third champion hurdle. If Constitution Hill does make a mistake in the white-hot heat of a champion hurdle, his ability to find a leg like he did here will be crucial. This was just a bit of exercise. Nico suggested afterwards he need galloping the week. He'd done so little. I think in the terms of the champion hurdle, punters are underestimating how far from full fitness Constitution Hill has been for his 2 runs this season. He's a deep girth gelding, but even allowing for that, the paddock reports here he's carrying plenty of condition again. Nicky would have left more to work on for this final prep than I think any other trainer. So Constitution Hill needs to get to the starting line in good health. I suspect they haven't pushed any buttons yet. But if he does, I'd expect him to be a different horse to the one that has won his 2 races this season. And I think that come the preview night season, there'll be lots of people opposing him saying, oh, he's only won by 3 lengths here. He isn't the horse he was. They may be right, but I doubt it. Even if the 2 mares and State Man line up, I think he'll win. He's 1.92 roughly at the moment, anti-post on the Matchbook Exchange. I'd be tempted to wait for the day when you know whether he's had a clear run or not. That will be crucial. And if the big guns from Ireland line up, I think he could be a bigger price on the day and he could be a great value bet.
Yeah, maybe the loss from the weekend might be the festival's gain, Don, if we do manage to get someone like Lassie Mount brighter days ahead or a back in form State Man to give Constitution Hill a race. It is exciting thinking about, and that 1.92 suggests that, you know, the punters, as Matt said, the market is still making its mind up of where Constitution Hill will be come that second week in March.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating, Dan. It really is, and it was great that he came out again because he was supposed to go straight from the Christmas hurdle to Cheltenham, and this race popped up, and Nicky said we'll have a go. Lassie, it's a pity Lassie Mount didn't travel. She was on this race was on her radar. She won the race last year. Capodanno as well was supposed to go over the Cotswold Chase, but I think the storm scuppered any plans that Willie had in mind for them. But look, it was good to see him there. And bar that mistake at the last, it was all very, very straightforward. Like Matt, I'm kind of similar. You know, when he leaves the ground, your heart's in your mouth. And he's that type of horse. He's had a few near misses in the past, and not as obvious as the near miss on Saturday. And watching it live, actually, I thought he was down. I just in that split second, I couldn't see how he was going to stand up. And brilliant that he did stand up, obviously. But he had another one I think it was a final flight in the champion hurdle. When he just got there, it was a long stride and he just got there, but he was just doing a half speed on Saturday, which was probably at the root of the problem. To put it into context, his time was over 10 seconds slower than the time that East India Dock clocked in one of the juveniles hurdles. So that gives you an indicator of how much of a stroll it was for Constitution Hill. But yeah, like Matt, it's fascinating. Like the champion hurdle picture, it's really intriguing. You have 4 big players in it and 1 or 2 others who are lurking in the wings. And we don't know what Brighter Days Ahead is going to do. State Man has to bounce back. Lossiemouth has to be better than she was in the Christmas hurdle when she just didn't travel. She just didn't jump as well as she can. So it's all in the mix. And yeah, we're going to be an awful lot wiser now at the weekend with the Irish Champion Hurdle.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that, and hopefully get a chance to speak about that before the end of the show. Let's move on to Thyestes Day and talk about the Galmoy Hurdle. And Matt, hit us with your trend. I'll get Don's thoughts on the race.
The trend is that this was first run in 2002, run as a 0 from 36 in the Stayers Hurdle, including 9 Galmoy winners.
Okay, Don, yeah, your eye catcher, I'll give it away, is going to be Rocky's Diamond from this race, but maybe some of the beaten horse. I thought, given the Devil Coachman's price, I just thought he'd have no chance, and he very nearly won it. So there's a lot to unpick from this race.
There is, yeah. It's a worrying stat that Matt has there in the Galmoy Hurdle. It's not a great pointer to the Stayers Hurdle. The Devil's Coachman ran a big race, staying on really well. He only went down by over a length in the end to Rocky's Diamond. Franciscan Rock ran really well as well. A Steering for Lunge, I suppose, ran like a Steering for Lunge sometimes does. Hidden Valley Lake, of course, was the big disappointment of the race. It just wasn't his running. He just never, when the pace quickened, he just couldn't get in among them. So you have to allow him that, and that obviously weakens the race if Hidden Valley Lake didn't give his running. But just thought Rocky's Diamond, he did plenty wrong, and he still won well. Like, he was keen early on. The pace was not fast. It was 113% finishing speed, and he was kind of keen early on. Shane Fitzgerald allowed him move up to be handy, but he was in front from a long way out then. And for a young horse to keep on as well as he did, to get the better of Franciscan Rock, and even when the Devil's Coachman came out of the pack after him, he was always holding him going to the line in the last 30 or 40 yards. The Devil's Coachman wasn't getting any closer to him, which kind of leads me to believe that he probably had a little bit in hand, Rocky's Diamond. Like, he's come from nowhere, this horse. He's only a 5-year-old. He was a 4-year-old when he ran in the Christmas Hurdle, and he ran a massive race there to finish third in a race that didn't pan out for him either. He didn't jump that well. He was a wee bit short of room on the inside around the home turner and into the home straight, and he did well to finish third behind Home by the Lee and Bob Ollinger. Like, that was a big run against some of the best staying hurdlers in Ireland. And to come on here, like, 5-year-olds, they just don't have a good record in these staying hurdles. But no 5-year-old had run in the Galmoy Hurdle in the last 10 years. No 5-year-old has ever won the Stayers Hurdle, which is a fairly damning stat. But really not many run in the race. The last 5-year-olds in the race were in 2015. When Tiger Roll was one of the 5-year-olds in the race. So it shows you how few 5-year-olds tried. This horse he's just progressing. We don't know how much more there is to come. And Declan Queally, his horses are in really, really good form. He's having a really purple patch at the minute, and he's done really well with this horse. Like, for him to pitch him into the Christmas Hurdle and into a Galmoy Hurdle, it's such a young horse with so little experience. He obviously holds him in really high regard, and the fact that he's as progressive as he is, he stays really well. There's probably plenty more to come from him as well, and he's not confirmed as a Stayers Hurdle horse yet, but in a division that I just think it doesn't have a whole lot of depth. Like, of course, Teahupoo is the outstanding horse in it. Home by the Lee is very, very good this year, even as an older horse, as good as he's ever been, probably. The Wall Park is in there as well. Maybe he can come forward from his run the last day in the Long Walk Hurdle. But just, as we saw in the Cleve Hurdle, which we'll come on to now, it's a division that doesn't have a huge amount of depth. And yeah, I just think Rocky's Diamond could take his place among them if he goes that route.
Yeah, it's good for racing about having Declan Queally with a top quality horse here potentially, and it just shows you those 4-year-olds from last year are quite a decent bunch.
I agree with both those. It's fantastic when you get one of the smaller yards having a horse for one of the championship races, and the last year's juveniles, I can't remember them ever being a stronger crop than that. He was the first 5-year-old ever to win the Galmoy. As Don was explaining, it's rare for horses of that age to run in the Stayers Hurdle. None has done so since 2015. So if you're a slave to trends, then people won't have him as a Stayers Hurdle horse. But I think, as you've said, Dan, you would just need to treat last year's juveniles differently. And what was really impressive here to me was his jumping. When he was 9 1/4 lengths third to Home by the Lee in the Christmas Hurdle, his jumping was still novice-y. Given it was his 5th career start in an open Grade 1, wasn't surprising. Now, he was on soft to heavy here rather than yielding ground, so going a pace slower, but his jumping was much slicker. So there may have been an element of having more time in his obstacles at Gorham, but equally it may be that the experience of an open Grade 1 has really helped him hone his jumping technique. Declan Wheely said probably go straight to Cheltenham, in which case it'll only be a year after the first run of his life. He'll be open to much more improvement from his bare form than pretty much all his opponents in the Stayers Hurdle. He's got form on any ground. Shane Fitzgerald did say afterwards that testing ground at Gorham suited him best, but he definitely shouldn't be underestimated in the Stayers Hurdle.
Okay, yeah, and we'll speak about the Cleve in eyecatchers. Both the guys have an eyecatcher from that race, so there you go. We will move on to the Limestone lad here. Matt, hit us with your training, your thoughts on the race. Amsterdam, another look. It's a common theme already, but the 5-year-olds stepping up from 4-year-olds. Where is this horse going to end up? Because Willie's been sort of who in a hand. Will this horse go to the champion? Where will he end up?
Yeah. So the trend for this race first is that since it became a graded race in 2011, runners are 4 from 25 at the festival, 102% profit. 4 winners have been spread across 4 different races: Champion Mare, Stayers Hurdles and the Coral Cup. It may only be a Grade 3 rather than a fashionable Grade 1, but a bit like the horse it's named after, it shouldn't be underestimated. Only 3 runners, and Amsterdam frightened off the opposition, went off 1.09. Rather than making the running and going a gallop that would be anything close to a champion hurdle pace and get a bit more experience of racing at that pace, he was dropped in last, ridden sprint past his 2 opponents up the straight, which he duly did, winning by an easy 11 lengths. He was a bit keen, but they weren't going very quickly. He jumped well, trait that should stand him in good stead when he moves into Grade 1 company. This all suggested to me that Willie didn't have the champion hurdle as plan A, and he said afterwards he was thinking of Aintree. Amsterdam's apparently a very buzzy type at home. Paul said both his runs he's been more professional on the racecourse than he expected. There is a bit of a question mark over whether the hullabaloo of the festival would suit him at this stage of the career. So I suspect if State Man performs in the Irish champion hurdle at the weekend, that Amsterdam will miss Cheltenham this year. He might well go to Aintree.
Yeah, Don, that seems to be where the vibes are going at the moment. But like you said, you just never know in racing, particularly if there's any issues with State Man.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's key, Dan. No, he was good. You know, as Matt was saying, couldn't have done much more than he did. His jumping was very good, and on the race IQ index is 8.8, and he was 8.9 when he won the Grade 3 at Ferryhouse. So his jumping has been very good, and that's obviously a massive positive. We just don't know how good he could be. I think Willie said that he thought he was his best juvenile last year, and that's in front of Matchbook, the Triumph Hurdle winner, in a stellar year for juveniles, as Matt and you were saying earlier on, Dan. So look, Amsterdam, he did really well. It was obviously very soft ground at Naas, but he did it well. And yeah, like, it was interesting to hear Willie afterwards talking about Aintree, but Aintree's 2.5 miles. So and he did say that if he needs to kind of just teach him to relax a bit more, and that's why Paul Townend dropped him in, obviously behind his two rivals. So that made sense. But, and again, we're back to 5-year-olds at a champion hurdle. They don't have a good record in the champion hurdle, but as you were saying earlier on, the two of you, just might be a bit of it might be a year in which we have to just allow a little bit of latitude to that trend. And Amsterdam, yeah, like what he did at Ferryhouse on his first run for Willie Mullins, that was really impressive. He looked like I think they said 40-1 about him, 41.0 after that race for the champion hurdle, but that was quickly taken. But as you said, Dan, an awful lot depends on how State Man performs at the weekend. If he runs like he did the last day at Leopardstown over Christmas, then there's a big chance that Amsterdam could come into the champion hurdle picture front and centre.
Absolutely. And look, we've seen in recent memory with Espoir D'Allen to win a champion hurdle there as a 5-year-old. Let's go to the Cotswold Chase. I might start with you, Don. Great to get a proper race, proper ding-dong up the Cheltenham Hill. What did you make of it? Because they've Gentleman's Game way back in third. What did you make of the form with a view to potentially Gold Cups?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure it's going to have a massive bearing on the Gold Cup, but I'm sure Matt will confirm that with his trend. Charlie Deutsch, he just gets better and better, doesn't he? Like, you know, he's just such a calm jockey. When he came up on the outside on L'Empressé, even though he didn't go past stage star very quickly, you just kind of always knew by Charlie Deutsch's body language that he was holding on to plenty. He only won by 3 parts of a length in the end, but it just finessed L'Empressé into the race. And you know, maybe L'Empressé should have been a bit more impressive than he was. He had everything in his favour: soft ground, going left-handed Cheltenham horse, and as you said, Dan, they left Gentleman's Game well behind. Gentleman's Game probably didn't jump as well as he can do, and it's his kind of second time to disappoint at Cheltenham, so maybe he's just not a Cheltenham horse. But for me, Stage Star was the revelation of the race. It was his first time going beyond 2 miles and 5 furlongs. His jumping was very good. His lengths gain jumping on Race IQ was plus 25. He was given £4 to L'Empresse as well, and I don't think you can say he didn't stay. He was just beat by a better horse on the day over 3 miles, 1.5 furlongs. Maybe that he'll go to Aintree, but his best runs have been at Cheltenham, so he just kind of falls between two stools a bit. He's probably too highly rated to be competitive, or to be a. I mean, he is a handicap winner, but he's just higher than you would like to be a handicap horse. He's not good enough for a Gold Cup, so he does fall between two stools a bit. But I thought it was a massive run, and he's 9 now. But I think there could be more to come from him over these kind of staying trips.
Yeah, Matt, hit us with your trend.
Yeah, the trend is that since Looks Like Trouble did the double in 2000, all 53 Cotswold runners have been beaten in the Gold Cup. Often it's run on really bad ground, and with modern training methods, trainers don't really want to be subjecting their top Gold Cup prospects to a race like that. So it doesn't tend to attract too many of the Gold Cup runners these days. I think at L'Empresse just outstayed Stage Star. To my eye, he looked a non-stayer in a well-run Gold Cup on really bad ground last year, but his only 7th on Saturday he'd been struck into in the Gold Cup, so perhaps that excuses his finishing effort. He's 10 now, run well both times this season. Doesn't look quite as good as he was. He goes very well fresh, probably ran to a similar level here, the King George. This was an excellent pot to win. I suspect he could be hard to place now. As Stage Star jumped superbly, just I think got outstayed by a really good horse at the weights and this sort of grade 2 level. With the doling out, this was only 22 yards short on the full Gold Cup trip. So despite it being more sedate gallop than is likely in March, he did prove his stamina for certainly 3 mile races. As Don said, he hadn't raced beyond 2 mile 5 before. He got a bit of a soft lead, and Harry Cobden got to set his own fractions. So that helped him. I think that the bowl at Aintree, if he's as effective on that track, as Don said, he does like Cheltenham, but that could be the race for him. You often get to the stage of the season where there aren't any top notches there. The other one for a quick mention is Delta Work, coming around in his own time to be 24 lengths fourth. He's already down a stone from his peak mark of 171. Be interesting to see how the Elliott X Grade 1 horses are handicapped for the cross country.
Yeah, steers looked into that race. A lot was covered, particularly on Racing TV by Lydia Hislop, if you want to go back and look at some of those clips and what was said about Delta Works' run. Let's move on to Dancing City here, Don. I mean, this horse hasn't done a lot wrong. I was actually just trying to remind myself, prepping for the show, his price in the Albert Bartlett last year versus Reed and Tommy Ron. So they really came for the Mullins #1, where Dancing City didn't do a lot wrong to come third. Has he improved for offences?
Yeah, he's definitely getting there, Dan. Like he was good the last day. He was good again here. He always travelled really well. Paul Townend got him into a good rhythm in front from early, and he was like Bioluminescence. She kept him honest the whole way. She stuck to him right up until they got over the final fence, and then he just came away a little bit more on the run-in. But she ran a massive race, and she was giving him £1, so she was £8 wrong at the weights. He didn't have to concede the £7 mare's allowance to her. So she ran a massive race. She stayed on really well. And Dancing City, yeah, just in the back of my mind is the fact that he was only third in the Albert Bartlett Hurdle last season, beaten by a horse whom he'd beaten the time before that, Stellar Story. So, but look, he's short for the Brown Advisory Chase now. So look, he's a really likable horse. He's 8 years old now, which is, I suppose, old enough for a novice, but he's doing it all right. He jumped well. He got into a nice rhythm. Paul Townend was able to set his own fractions in front, a finishing speed percent of 110%. Tells you that he was able to set a fairly sedate pace and then just wind it up. And Dancing City, we know that he stays well. So it was a nice performance by him. He was an odds-on shot on the day, so you would have expected him to go and win. But he won nicely. He won with a wee bit in hand. And yeah, all systems go, I'm sure, now for the Brown Advisory Chase. Just the other horse in the race I'd like to mention is D Capo. I just don't think he stayed. He was up to 3 miles and a furlong on heavy ground, and I thought he did well to win at Leopardstown on his previous run at Christmas over 2 miles 5.5 furlongs when he was back in the field off a sedate pace, and he stayed on to get the better of Chapeau de Soleil and Quai de Bourbon. And they, for me, both enhanced the form of that race at Coran Park there on Thursday. So, and look, he finished very tired. Di Capo, like to see him back to 2.5 miles. That's probably his optimum trip. He's probably not a 2 mile kind of Arkle horse, even though I think he does have an entry in it. But yeah, Di Capo, he was beaten 30 lengths here, but I think he can put a line through it. He travelled well until I think stamina was the issue, especially stamina on the ground, and maybe back down to 2.5 miles. I could see him in a better light.
Yeah, maybe more with a view to the Brown Advisory, Matt. Will Dancing City end up being that Mullins #1 in the race?
Well, that's an excellent question, isn't it? I mean, we'll need to see how Ballyburn gets on at the DRF this weekend and the vibes about which Paul wants to ride. This hasn't been a strong race traditionally. Runners are 1 from 46 at the festival, 0 from 10 in the Broadway. The only festival to start with on a week renewal of the old level weights National Hunt Chase. 10 runners said to have gone for the Broadway, but 24 have run in the National Hunt Chase. And as Don was explaining, this really puts the emphasis on stamina here. That's the only concern with Dancing City, because he jumps and he gallops, showed he's really tough over hurdles. I can't remember many horses running in the staying novice hurdle grade ones at DRF, Cheltenham, Aintree and Punchestown, and he held his form to win the last 2. He's got a great attitude, but he does look the type who may be vulnerable in the Broadway to something with a turn of foot. Whilst he seems very versatile as to ground, if it came up testing, it would blunt the speed of his opponents and increase his chances. He's 5.5. I'd be holding fire for now. I think that we might get a bigger field than people are anticipating in the Broadway. Some discussion about the number of entries, that it hadn't gone up as some people thought. But what you need to bear in mind about that is last year, quite a few horses were entered for that, but ended up running in the Turners or the National Hunt Chase and won't do this year. So I'd expect a higher proportion of the entries to run, and I think we might get a decent sized field. Bioluminescence, as Don said, carrying the £8 penalty, just looked to get outslogged by a classy stayer on the run-in, even though they've gone steadily. She's a really good jumper. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility she could reverse the form if they met in a grade 1, 3.5 lengths to make up for the £8 swing. Interestingly, Derek O'Connor said after riding her on a chasing debut at Limerick, she'd have been an ideal horse for the old level weights National Hunt Chase. So she's not in the Broadway. It'll be interesting to see whether she does drop back to 2.5 of the Mares Chase. But some of the established mares like Limerick Lace and Dino Blue haven't looked in the same form this season. Impervious hasn't run for a long time. JP McManus does have a lot of options for the Mares Chase, so be uncertain whether he'll want to run Bioluminescence. But last year, Limerick Lace went off joint favourite for the National after winning that, so admittedly on bad ground. So stayers can win. She's a really good mare and one to keep on side.
Okay, we'll stick with you, Matt, for the juveniles. And East India Doc, I thought was very, very impressive. Talked up before the race, given the time he ran in this first race, and I thought he's powered up that Cheltenham Hill, to be honest with you. So we have a live duel in the juvenile hurdle before we get the spring juvenile this weekend. So it's setting up to be in a cracking renewal of the Triumph in Cheltenham.
Absolutely. Yeah, and a mixture. Back in the day, the Triumph was just dominated by battle-hardened ex-flat horses. More recent times, as the flat horse is not going jumping so much, we've had it jump spread horses like La Lumba, the favourite, who's just had a couple of career starts. Whereas East India Doc is very much the sort of old-fashioned Triumph hurdle horse, good on the flat, really improved on the flat last summer, started off with a rating of 66, ended up 89. So though he doesn't have the same level of improvement as a racehorse in him after all those runs as La Lumba does, you'd think he is a horse who is improving with every run. I was really impressed with this. The trend is that, like a lot of the grade 2 juvenile hurdlers in Britain, there's been a race to focus on the winner for the festival and oppose the rest. Winners are 3 from 15 the Triumph, runners are 0 from 29 in the Fred Winter. So I think there's cause for optimism. He's still improving. James Owen said he wasn't that fit for this. Maybe he's following the sort of Nicky Henderson style of leaving the studs well short of peak fitness for their final prep. If he gets a sound surface in particular, I think he'll have every chance. 4.0 looks about right. We'll know a lot more about the Triumph picture after the spring juvenile at Leopardstown at the weekend.
Yeah, Don, have you a strong opinion on those two at the top of the market and their prices? Because we can maybe leave aside the Irish horses because we'll know more, won't we, this weekend? And maybe Hello Neighbour might come on a lot for Christmas and stuff. I know you're a big fan, but maybe focus on those top two, East India Doc in particular.
Yeah, I think they're the wrong way around in the betting. Like, it's very easy to argue that East India Doc should be favourite. Lumba was good the last day and will improve, but East India Dock, he's done everything right. He's got form at the track. His time, as mentioned earlier on, was 10 seconds faster than Constitution Hill, and even the last 4 furlongs, he was only marginally slower than Constitution Hill was, and that was after going more quickly through the early part of the race. Like, you know, Constitution Hill didn't reach maximum speed or anything like it, but it's still a good indicator. And he's a well-bred horse, East India Dock. He's a half brother to Burdett Road, but interestingly, Burdett Road is by Muharar, a sprinter. He's by Golden Horn. So the stamina in his pedigree, and that's the stamina that you kind of need for a Triumph Hurdle. It's normally a stamina horse that tends to win a Triumph Hurdle. So, like, he did everything right. As Matt said, he's got his flat rating of 89, so it's a good rating to bring onto the juvenile hurdling scene. And yeah, you couldn't have faulted much about the performance that he put up. And Stenson's an interesting horse coming over here. He kept on well to finish second for Noel George and Amanda Zetterholm. And the Paul Nicholls horse, Sauvignon, thought he was an interesting horse going into the race. Like, he was very weak in the market, and he was pulled up ultimately. So you have to put a line through this run. But he beat Sonny Bill in France. Sonny Bill is now at Willie Mullins and went out and finished third behind Hello Neighbour in that Grade 2 juveniles hurdle that Hello Neighbour won over Christmas. And actually, the BHA had him rated 138, £1 higher than East India Dock was going into the race. So he's just a horse who, you know, he might go a wee bit under the radar now, having disappointed on his first run for Paul Nicholls. But he's a horse that might come forward, and, you know, he could be worth noting wherever he goes. But no, agree with Matt. Like, East India Dock, he did everything very, very well, and I think he deserves to be, you know, very high in the market as he is, probably top of the market of the Triumph Hurdle. But yeah, very, very interested to see how the Spring Juvenile Hurdle goes at the weekend.
Okay, yes, if that's your thing to take those kind of prices now, overpriced according to Don, East India Dock for the Triumph Hurdle. We obviously have the Spring Juvenile this weekend, which we might touch on before the end of the show. So, Matt, go back to you for the Classic Novices Hurdle and 6 Mile Bridge, and very impressive winner here. Obviously, Potter's Charm disappointed in behind, so sometimes when a favourite's beaten like that, it's hard to get maybe as excited as the winner. What's your assessment of where that horse could potentially be for a Cheltenham race?
Yes, I thought he was really good, 6 Mile Bridge. And this race is a good illustration of the power shift westwards across the Irish Sea. First run in 2005, it used to be the best novice hurdle trial for the Turners, and especially the Albert Bartlett, producing 2 winners of the four of the latter in the first 8 renewals. So between 2005 and 13, runners were 6 from 18, 140% profit. Since then, 0 from 24. It's perfectly timed to bring the best of the British novice is together, get the experience of Presbury Park en route to the festival, which is why it was such a good trial. And historically, it's been a good race for punters who like to do related contingency doubles. This case, the Turners and the Albert Bartlett. Fisher's Cross beat the new one. Bobsworth beat Rock on Ruby. Richard to Lyman beat the 1-2 in the Turners, Mercedes Maguire and Tidal Bay. But in recent years, the Irish have dominated those races, especially the Turners. Since that 2013 renewal that Fisher's Cross won, Willoughby Court 2017 is the only British trained winner of the Turners. There have only been 3 of the 11 Albert Bartletts as well. Been plenty of chat about British Renaissance this year, including the novice hurdles. After the Jukebox Man was the only British trained horse to finish in the first 5 in the 3 Grade 1 novice hurdles last year. We'll wait and see what happens at DRF at the weekend before buying into that. But this year, Potter's Charm has looked a really good horse. He described as flat here from the word go, having come to it as a bit of an afterthought. But I wouldn't take anything away from 6 Mile Bridge. He would have won, even if he'd not been getting the £5. He'd won 2 week races at odds on. So this was a huge step up. He's in the Supreme and Turners, not the Albert Bartlett. With the Turners, presumably the likely target, he's going to arrive there a bit of an unknown quantity. 17.0 looks about right, as pre-DRF at least. There are no star novice hurdlers at the moment. And Ben Pauling's won that race with Willoughby Court. Be interested what the vibes are in the run-up to Cheltenham. I'd be open-minded over whether this was the performance of an embryonic Grade 1 novice or whether the race just fell apart. Because Potter's Charm's clearly underperformed, but it's hard to know how much he's underperformed. Maybe there was a bit of after timing when the Twiston Davis said, we're just going here because it looked a weaker race. But on his Formby win, he's right in the mix for the Turners. And he's out to 17.0 as well, which is tempting, because I suspect there'll be a bit of groupthink of, the Twiston Davis team just over-raced him. That'll have ruined his chances for the festival. he's actually got very good form. His 2 previous wins over intermediate trip on good ground, whilst he showed in the form he handled soft ground, that was at 2-1. Maybe he's got more speed than he's been given credit for and actually got outstayed a bit here. Wouldn't give up on him yet.
Okay, so both horses in and around that 17.0 if they both end up in the Turners, done now. But for pre-DRF is always tough. But as it stands, it doesn't seem to be too much to be scared of in the market. If you did want to maybe take a flyer on those British novices, out of the two, which one would you be siding with?
That's a difficult question, Dan, because I agree with a lot of what Matt said. I mean, Potter's Charm, after the Formby, they said he was going directly to Cheltenham, and at what point did they decide to run him here? If it was late, and maybe it was late, then to what degree was he not as ready as he could have been or should have been? I think if you back Potter's Charm for even before the race, and I hadn't, or I didn't back Potter's Charm for the Turners before the race, but if you had, you would have been disappointed to seeing him even lining up here, because what did he need to do in order to enhance his claims to the Turners? He probably had to go and win impressively, but he's been busy. So to have another race, like that seemed like a brilliant plan to give him his break after the Formby and go straight to Cheltenham. He took in this race. He did underperform, as Matt said. He was given £5 a 6 Mile Bridge, but that 6 Mile Bridge was very, very good. It's only his 4th run over hurdles. He's now won 3 of them. He was stepping up markedly in class, and he led from early. Then Bill Joyce passed him actually at the second last, and then he came back and went away and won well. He didn't get an easy lead. The finishing speed percent was 101%, so it wasn't like he was able to stack them up and then sprint. He was all out, as in all out. He set his pace, set a good pace. It's good to see Fergal O'Brien with a good winner after Cranbrook disappointed. And actually, his horses are in good form. He had another winner at Sedgefield there on Sunday, and another one at Plumpton on Monday. So 6 Mile Bridge, he's a likely raced horse. I can definitely see him being in the Turners picture. Just a note on Bill Joyce, I wouldn't give up on him either. The ground was officially soft on the hurdles track. The time suggests it was a wee bit quicker than that, and that wouldn't have been soft enough for him. He was really impressive in winning the Winter Novices Hurdle at Sandown on soft ground. This 2.5 mile trip on ground just not quite soft. It shouldn't have been a stern enough test for him. He's a brother to Church Road Prince, who's a stayer of Jonathan Sweeney's, and maybe stepping up on trip will see Bill Joyce in a better light, or back on softer ground, or maybe even a combination of both. That EBF Novices Hurdle handicap final at Sandown on Imperial Cup Day, and I don't know what the plans are for him, but that would be a good race for him. He's got a rating now of 136, back to Sandown on soft ground. He would be of interest if that were his target, but I think we'll see a better horse, better performance from Bill Joyce when he can get back on softer ground.
Okay, we will move on to the Sol Arena, and we'll start back with you, Don, on Aurora Vega. What do you make of this mare here? Because splitting opinion a little bit. Obviously, a lot of people aren't quite impressed.
No, look, she's always she's unfortunate given her breeding. She's always going to have to live up to that, and especially she's in the same colours as well. But look, she's going about her business. She was probably maybe didn't perform as a bumper horse as well as people might have expected, but she's getting going now over hurdles. That's her 3rd win now from 4 runs over hurdles. She's 2 for 2 at Fairyhouse. Her only defeat over hurdles was at Wexford when she was 10-1 on back in October, which that obviously wasn't her running. But I thought she did well here. Paul Townend chose to ride her. The market responded. She was strong in the market, although I think Willie said afterwards that he thought one of his other horses, was it Fancy Girl, Danny, the filly that Danny rode, that she might have the beating of Aurora Vega, but obviously she didn't. Aurora Vega was good. She continues to progress. Willie was saying afterwards, though, that he was thinking about going to Fairyhouse instead, which, look, this race, it's been a brilliant pointer in the past. Lorena won it, Shattered Love won it, Honeysuckle won it, Imini won it, Jed DeGrugy won it last year. So it is a race that it's a grade 3, but it is a race from which these mares do use they do use as a springboard to go on to grade 1s. So Aurora Vega, I think she's going about things the right way. Her breeding suggests that she should be very good. She's getting there. She keeps on improving, and back at Fairyhouse for that race at the Easter meeting should be very interesting in that. I thought Dream On Baby did well as well. It wasn't a fast run race. She's a real stamina horse. Her dam actually won over 3 miles for Willie Mullins, and her dam's a 3-part sister to Witchy to Lineman and a half sister to Rhinestone Cowboy. So really well bred mare as well. That's her 3rd run now of her hurdles. The first 2 came clear. She stayed on really well to run Aurora Vega to less than 2 lengths in the end. So that was a big performance. She won over 2 miles and 7 at Thurles. So I think going back out and trip for Dream On Baby, even to 2.5 miles, or maybe even back up to a staying trip, then that could see her in a better light. But no, I think the first two are two mares to keep on side.
Okay, yeah. Is it going to be? It has been a pointer in the past on to the mares, but is it going to be this year? Or sorry, Matt.
Yeah, it could easily be. I've just realised I'm about 6 months out of date talking about the Megson source is still being driven by Ben Pauling. Of course, he's with Fergal O'Brien. Solarina, yeah, the 5 winners of the Dawn Run have won, so it's been a decent guide. Willie, as Dom said, was talking about Fairy House at Easter. And then he sort of said, oh, when is Easter? The answer to that is 5 weeks after Cheltenham. It's very late this year. Easter Day is on the 20th of April. So it could be that Aurora Vega and horses like her could do both of those races. Like Don, our Dream On Baby was interesting. I thought she was a bit of an eye catcher here. Looking green, going sideways between the last two. When she was pulled out from horses, she went to her left. Then when Donna Myler gave her a crack on the left quarter, she veered back to the right. So Don said she's won over 2 miles 7, that maybe this was a bit of a sharp test for her. Just looks a work in progress. This was her 3rd hurdle start, so she's an unlikely runner in a festival handicap. She struggled to get 2 more runs in, but she could well be one that Emmett Mullins produces to win a good handicap further down the line. She has gone up £10 from 120 to 130, but I still think that's workable because she looks to have a lot of improvement in her. And she was shifting left at her hurdles generally through the race here, only run right-handed over timber so far. So maybe going the other way round will be the day that she's primed for the handicap. She's one to keep an eye on.
Okay, and we will move on to our eye catchers and start with you, Don. You obviously have Rocky's Diamond that we mentioned, and then you can lead into your other two.
Yeah, Rocky's Diamond, as we mentioned, I just think he could be under the radar as a stayers hurdle contender. He's got all the trends are against him as a 5-year-old. But as we were saying earlier on, it could be a year in which you need to just treat the 5-year-old trend with a bit of circumspection, given the quality of last year's juveniles. And Declan Queeley's done a phenomenal job with him so far, but he might be under the radar because he comes from a relatively small yard. And yeah, I just think he's going to be of interest if he does take up his engagement, his entry in the stayers hurdle. Second eye catcher then is Calico, who finished 4th behind Petit Tonnerre in the 2-mile handicap chase at Doncaster on Saturday. They just went a very, very fast pace here. Maybe there's a bit of pocket talk here. I thought Calico might sit in behind the leaders, and third time lucky went on. He finished 5th, beating 29 lengths behind Calico. Storm and Cross Gales finished pulled up, didn't finish. Calico got into a contest for the early pace. Then Harry Skelton took him back and he sat behind the front two, but then he went on again. He actually led again at the 4th last. He traded short enough in running, but ultimately those early exertions took their toll, and like he had a finishing speed percent of 91%, which tells you that they just went really fast. Petit Tonnerre, by contrast, even though he was held up, he still had a finishing speed percent of only 96%. So it was a really fast run race. Petit Tonnerre was held up in behind, given a really good ride by Richie McLernan, and stayed on well to win nicely. But Calico, just think there could be a race in him now. He's got a mark of 142. He beat Matata back at Cheltenham's October meeting. Matata was rated 147 then. He won at Windsor there of 155. Don't know what his new mark is, possibly in the 160s. But Calico beat him that day and beat him on merit. When he just sat in behind Matata and Dancing on My Own that day. So he's got good form at Cheltenham as well. Calico, he's good form at Doncaster too, but he does have good form at Cheltenham. He ran in the Grand Annual last year. Tristan Durrell rode him and he finished behind Unexpected Party, who was the stable's choice on the mount of Harry Skelton. But the Grand Annual could be a race for him again this year. I just think the Grand Annual could suit him well if it sits just in behind the pace. I just think he could be a well handicapped horse, Calico, even though he's looking fairly exposed. But I think a mark of 142 is more than workable for him. And the third one then is Total Luck of Gavin Cromwell, who finished 3rd behind Slurricane in the 2-mile handicap hurdle, the 4-year-olds handicap hurdle there at Punchestown yesterday actually. He just got outpaced whenever they quickened, but then he stayed on really well. It wasn't a fast run race. The finishing speed percent was 112%, and he could be a horse for the Fred Winter hurdle. The winner of this race, Eagles Reign, trained by Ross O'Sullivan, who also trained Slurricane, the winner of this year's renewal. He went and ran a massive race in the Fred Winter hurdle. He won this race last year off a mark of 113. He was rated 123. at Cheltenham, and he ran a big race to finish second behind Lark in the Morning. Lark in the Morning won the Fred Winter last year of 122, and Total Luck has he's got a flat rating of 87, which again is a good flat rating to bring into juvenile hurling scene. He's got a rating now of 123, and he shouldn't go up for that. I'm sure the British handicapper will give him a couple of pounds on top of that. But it should get him into the Fred Winter hurdle on a nice racing weight. Last year, the lowest rating was 120. So he should get into it all right. And he's got Cheltenham form as well. He ran well enough there to finish third behind two horses who were well beaten behind East India Dock. But he still ran well there at the track. So yeah, I think Total Luck, he could be a horse maybe to keep in the back of your mind for the Fred Winter hurdle.
Okay, Don's 3, Rocky's Diamond, Calico, and Total Luck. Matt, kick us off with Transmission and the Cleve hurdle thoughts as well.
Yes, runners from the Cleve since it became a 3-mile race, 4 from 10 in the Ultima, 490% profit. And the point about this trend is not the Ultima specifically, but if you have a classy staying handicap chaser whose mark you want to protect whilst giving them a final prep for the festival, Cleve's an ideal race. And Neil Mulholland is one trainer who's used that route before. Druid's nephew won the Ultima of 146 after being 16 lengths 5th of 6 in the Cleve in 2015. Nearly pulled the trick off with a young master who was 3rd in the Ultima the following year. His runner Transmission went off only 10.0, had a run round the back, beaten 18.5 lengths, looked to finish with a bit of running left. And he's had the 4 chases to qualify for the Open Handicap, so he could run in the Ultima, but he is a novice with a rating of 133. And all his chase starts for Neil have been over 3 mile plus. He was actually ridden by Patrick Mullins here in November. So Neil said earlier in the season, the new 0 to 145 handicap version of the National Hunt Chase is the plan. So whilst the trends for the Ultima, no reason why the principle wouldn't apply to the Kim Muir or the National Hunt Chase. We've no precedent for whether 133 gets in or not, but assuming it does, wonder if Patrick may end up riding again if Willie doesn't have anything for the race. Having allowed professionals to ride, I imagine Patrick take even more delight than would be otherwise the case by winning the race. So lots of trainers running horses in that, it seems. It could be in for a big field. Transmission's one for the long list. Second is Imperial Saint. Everyone will have spotted Iroko's run in the big 2 mile 4 handicap at Cheltenham on Saturday. That may have deflected attention from the horse who finished 1 place in front of him, and that's Imperial Saint. Been really progressive since switched to fences this season, winning off 124, 128, 137. 2.25 lengths, 3rd off 144 here. First 2 wins are on good ground. Last one officially good to soft, but was changed to soft at the next race at Aintree. So looks like he handles any ground. Jumps really well. Still looked a well handicapped horse. At the festival, he's got the option of the 2 mile 4 novice handicap chase, or he could take the advice of the old handicapper Phil Smith, who always used to ask why you run in that and potentially run into an Aplutar when you could take on much more exposed handicappers in the plate. Perhaps the fact he was pitched into an open handicapper here suggests that rather than running in the novice handicap, he'll go for the plate. Philip Hobbs had 20 festival runners when his was the only name on the training licence. Like a few of the top British trainers of the first 2 decades of the century, he's been squeezed out a bit in recent years. Hasn't had a festival winner since Steffi de Soy in 2019. Perhaps Imperial Saint can give him a first one since Johnson White joined him on the licence. The final one is Castle Carrick. A bit more low-key, certainly in the short term, but looks a good long-term prospect. Sandown on Friday, the Grade 2 nickel coin bumper winner, Diva Luna, was long odds on to record a second win over hurdles. Got to dictate, jumped really well, readily outpointed by the hurdling debutant here. He bolted up by 16 lengths in a weak-looking bumper for Nicky Richards in November, sold to join Alan King. It's an unknown quantity here, looks a really smart recruit. He readily outpointed the favourite, won by 3 3/4 lengths, despite being a bit keen. His bumper win came on good ground. This was pretty soft going, so looks to have a bright future. He's not been entered in the Grade 1 novice hurdles at the festival. Likely Alan will bring him on more steadily, but he looks one to keep on side going forward.
That's Castle Carrick, Transmission, and Imperial Saint for Matt in his eye catchers this week. And we move on to the Dublin Racing Festival. Don, we have a lot of clashes. What are you most looking forward to? I mean, I can show we've got the repeat of Factophile, Galloping the Sham, Loziemouth versus Stayman. I think the common theme looking at the races is it's mostly Willie Mullins battles, but look, we're still going to get some incredible battles, I think, this weekend.
Yeah, look, how long do we have for this? Look, it's a phenomenal weekend ahead, as you said, Dan. The Willie Mullins battles they're going to be front and center. He won the 8 Grade 1 races last year. I'm not sure he'll do that again this year. No, maybe, but it's a big ask. But key to that, I think the first 3 Grade 1 winners last year, Danny Mullins rode them. They weren't chosen, the stables chosen. So it's brilliant that he runs them against each other. It makes for a phenomenal festival. And yeah, look, the headlines, Galloping the Tom against Factifile again. The Irish Champion Hurdle going to be a fascinating race. However that pans out. Looking forward to seeing Majbury again going left-handed. His jumping was so good the last day in his chasing debut, but he did jump to his left, so he'll be going left-handed this time. I'm looking forward to seeing Hello Neighbour again. He did an awful lot wrong the last day and still won his Grade 2, so he'll be taking on San Lucie as well and Lady Vega Allen again. So that'll be those juveniles, and the British juveniles we were saying earlier on, and they've done it. He's in the Adoc. He set out his stall. Lamba likewise, and now it's up to the Irish juveniles to go and catch them up.
Yeah, Matt, for you?
Yeah, the one race that jumps out on me is of the Grade 1s is the Nathaniel Lacey, the 2-mile-6 novice hurdle that kicks DRF off. Final demands a 2.75 favourite anti-post. Looked like he could be anything on his rules debut, and second career start at Limerick, second and third of 1 since of the former Substance. But he did look a bit green there. This is usually a tough attritional race. It's only the 8th renewal. No horse has won it off one hurdle start yet. He could be a star, but he'll have to have a lot of natural talent to be winning this off just a point in a maiden hurdle. And the one I like against him is Super Sunday. He's actually a 4th season novice. He's had just 5 starts all over hurdles, 10.5 lengths 7th in the Supreme on his first start for Willie Mullins. He was well backed into 7.0 for the Grade 1 at Naas earlier in the month. Keen there on his first run since May, so he'd need that to have taken the freshness out of him to be winning this. But he finished 8 lengths second, shaping as if when he relaxes he'd get further. That's probably the best bear form of any of these on the basis the yellow clay isn't likely to run. He's 5.5 in anti-post books. There are 18 entered, and we've had a couple of double-figure size fields for this. So I'd wait until Dex. As you may see, you get at least as big a price then, rather than taking the anti-post risk. So we'll see what price he is, but I'm hoping to be backing Super Sunday in the 2-mile-6 novice hurdle at 120 on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's called the Solicitor's Novice Hurdle now, according to what I'm looking at here. So I guess a new sponsor there of some description. But my thanks to Matt and Don, and we will have a full Dublin racing preview with Tom and all the guys. That will be in your podcast feed on Thursday. But we will be back same time, same place on Tuesday with our bumper Dublin Racing Festival review, and then a look ahead towards those races and where it leaves the Cheltenham picture. But do check out insights.matchbook.com for all our betting content throughout the week, and all going well. We will chat to you next week. Enjoy the DRF. Bye bye.